The morning diagnostic cycle proceeded as it had for the past 417 rotations. Senior field taxonomist Hfy checked the atmospheric regulators in Xenobiology Lab 7 with the same methodical attention he applied to all tasks. 3 taps on each pressure gauge, visual confirmation of the green indicators, notation in the duty log. The air tasted correct, precisely 2.3 parts hydrogen to the standard oxygen-nitrogen base, maintained at 287 Kelvin with less than 0.1 degree variance. The specimen tanks hummed their steady song along the eastern wall. Each one a perfectly controlled microenvironment housing specimens from the 73 worlds currently under taxonomic survey. Hfy had organized them by atmospheric composition, then by taxonomic complexity, then by date of acquisition. The system was elegant. The system was logical. The system had required 6 months to implement, and would require 6 seconds to verify each morning. He moved to Tank 47, which housed an amphibious filter feeder from Kepler 442b. The creature pulsed gently in its saline suspension, filtering microorganisms through its gill structures exactly as its genetic programming dictated. Predictable. Documented. Understood. The morning briefing would begin in 43 minutes. Hfy prepared his presentation slides with the same precision he applied to all tasks. The Taxonomic Council required updates every 7 rotations, and he had never missed a deadline. Never submitted a report with formatting errors. Never failed to triple-check his citations against the central database. The door's atmospheric seal hissed. Hfy did not look up from his slides. Only 3 individuals possessed clearance for Lab 7 during pre-briefing hours. Director Shentok, who never arrived before the 3rd hour. Laboratory Coordinator Meshvin, who was attending a conference on Tau Ceti Prime. And the human observer. Morning, the human said. Hfy completed his current sentence before acknowledging the greeting. Good morning, Specialist Kowalski. You are 19 minutes early. Traffic was good. Hfy did not ask what traffic the human referred to. The station's transport tubes operated on fixed schedules with predictable intervals. Perhaps it was another human idiom. He had compiled a list of 73 such phrases in the past 4 months, none of which conveyed useful information when analyzed literally. Specialist Kowalski moved to the observation station near Tank 12. The human's assigned task was to document behavioral patterns in the station's xenobiological specimens, a redundant function, as all tanks possessed automated recording systems that captured data with far greater precision than organic observation could provide. But the Treaty of Kepler 186 required cultural exchange liaisons in all major research facilities. And Taxonomic Station Theta 9 had drawn a human. Director Shentok had delivered a 3-hour presentation on proper protocols for working alongside humans. Most of it had focused on safety regulations. Humans were classified as Class 4 persistence hunters with elevated threat assessment scores. But the director had also emphasized the importance of tolerance for their alternative methodologies. Hfy watched from the corner of his secondary visual organs as Specialist Kowalski produced a small tablet and began tapping notes. The human's eyes moved in rapid focused patterns, tracking something in Tank 12 that Hfy's own scans had marked as no anomalous activity for the past 16 days. The Epsilon Eridani cephalopod is exhibiting stress responses, Specialist Kowalski said without looking up. Hfy checked his monitors. All readings remained within normal parameters. The instrumentation shows no indication of distress. Look at the way it's holding its tentacles. See that tremor in the 3rd and 5th appendages? And the chromatophores along its dorsal surface are cycling through defensive patterns every 47 seconds. Hfy looked. He had reviewed this specimen's behavior for 4 months and had never noticed the pattern the human described. But now that it had been indicated, he could observe it clearly. A subtle rhythmic contraction. A color shift so slight that it fell within the equipment's margin of error. The pattern you describe would indicate response to a predator stimulus, Hfy said slowly. There is no predator in the tank. No, the human agreed. But look at Tank 11, the Procyon A eel analog. It's been positioned at the corner nearest to Tank 12 for... Specialist Kowalski consulted the tablet. 3 days now. It probably can't see the cephalopod through the tank wall, but the cephalopod can see it. That's an ambush predator's body plan. The cephalopod knows it. Hfy examined Tank 11. The eel analog had indeed maintained that position, which he had noted in his logs as typical resting behavior for the species. He had not considered the spatial relationship between the tanks. Why would he? The specimens were isolated in separate controlled environments. Their proximity was irrelevant. Except, the human was correct. The cephalopod was demonstrating fear responses to a predator it could observe, but which could not possibly harm it. "I will adjust the privacy screening between the tanks," Vreshkal said. "Probably for the best." Specialist Kowalski returned to the tablet, and Vreshkal returned to his presentation slides. But he found himself glancing at the tanks with uncomfortable frequency, seeing patterns he had not seen before, questioning observations he had already classified as complete. The morning briefing proceeded on schedule. Vreshkal delivered his report to the Taxonomic Council with his usual precision. Director Shentok nodded approvingly at each slide. No one questioned his conclusions. No one suggested alternative interpretations. The session concluded in 42 minutes, exactly as scheduled. Specialist Kowalski attended as a silent observer, as per protocol. The human took notes but did not speak. Afterward, as Vreshkal was organizing his presentation materials for archival, Director Shentok approached with his walking appendages arranged in the configuration that indicated important business. "I have read Specialist Kowalski's observation reports," the director said. "They are detailed. The human has good visual acuity." Vreshkal replied neutrally. "Yes, remarkably good." The director's throat sac pulsed twice, a sign of discomfort. "The human has identified behavioral patterns in 17 specimens that our automated systems did not flag. 3 of those patterns indicated undiagnosed health problems. I have assigned Specialist Kowalski to conduct a comprehensive review of all specimens in Labs 5 through 9. That will take several weeks." "Yes." The director's throat sac pulsed again. "I suggest you accompany the human during these reviews, for protocol purposes." Vreshkal understood. The director wanted him to determine how the human was achieving these observations, and whether the methodology could be incorporated into standard procedures. It was a logical assignment. It was his duty to the Taxonomic Council. It was also going to be extremely inconvenient. The comprehensive review began the following morning. Specialist Kowalski arrived at Lab 5 at the start of first shift, carrying the tablet and a container of human beverage that smelled of burnt plant matter. "Coffee," the human explained, noticing Vreshkal's sensory organs reacting to the odor. "Want some?" "I do not possess the digestive enzymes to process caffeine safely." "Right. Forgot." Specialist Kowalski took a long drink from the container. "Where do you want to start?" They started at Tank 1 and worked systematically forward. Vreshkal had expected the human to rush, to make intuitive leaps, to demonstrate the cognitive patterns his species was documented to exhibit. Instead, Specialist Kowalski was methodical. Each specimen received 5 full minutes of observation. The human watched, made notes, moved to the next tank. At Tank 14, the human stopped. "That's a Kepler 62e social insectoid, right?" Specialist Kowalski asked. "Correct. Colony structure with distinct castes. Worker, warrior, and reproductive roles clearly differentiated. How many should be in there?" Vreshkal checked his records. 43 individuals, standard colony size for laboratory observation. "Count them." Vreshkal activated the tank's automated census function. The system scanned for biological signatures, compiled data, produced a result. 43 individuals present. "The count is correct," Vreshkal said. "Count them manually, actually look at them." It was an unusual request. The automated systems were far more reliable than organic counting. But Vreshkal complied. He focused his primary visual organs on the tank and began counting the visible insects. He reached 38. He counted again. 38. "The system reports 43, but I can only locate 38 individuals," Vreshkal said slowly. "Check the colony structure," Specialist Kowalski suggested. "How many of each caste?" Vreshkal examined the distribution. 29 workers, 7 warriors, 2 reproductives, and that adds up to 38. Vreshkal felt something uncomfortable shifting in his thought processes. The automated census is incorrect, but it has never been incorrect. It counts biological signatures. What if there are 5 biological signatures present, but they're not insects anymore? Vreshkal looked at the human sharply. Then he looked at the tank more carefully. The substrate at the bottom showed disturbance patterns. Small excavations. Material displacement. The colony had been displaying increased aggressive behavior toward one corner of the tank. which he had attributed to territorial establishment. He activated the tank's internal scanner at maximum resolution and focused on the substrate. 5 insect carapaces lay buried in the material, partially decomposed. The colony had killed them. The colony had been killing them over the course of weeks, and the automated system had continued counting their biological signatures, because those signatures were still present, even though the organisms themselves were dead. Cannibalism, Vreshikal said quietly. This species does not exhibit cannibalistic behaviors. It is not documented in any of the taxonomic literature. They're stressed, Specialist Kowalski said. Look at how they're moving. Agitated. Random patterns instead of coordinated foraging. Something in their environment is wrong. Vreshikal checked every parameter. Temperature, optimal. Humidity, optimal. Nutrition, optimal. Air composition, optimal. All conditions are within acceptable ranges, he said. Maybe your acceptable ranges are wrong. The word struck something fundamental in Vreshikal's understanding of proper procedure. Acceptable ranges were not wrong. They were calculated from extensive field studies, verified through multiple observation periods, confirmed by peer review. They could not simply be wrong. But 5 insects were dead, and the colony was exhibiting pathological behaviors. I will request a review of the environmental parameters for this species, Vreshikal said. Specialist Kowalski nodded and moved to the next tank. They found problems in 11 more specimens before the shift ended. Small problems mostly. A parasitic infection that mimicked normal organ function. A territorial dispute between 2 specimens that should not have been able to interact through their tank barrier, but had been exchanging chemical signals that the sensors did not detect. A specimen that was actually 2 specimens. A mating pair that had bonded so completely that even Vreshikal's trained observations had counted them as one. How are you seeing these things? Vreshikal asked finally. Specialist Kowalski took another drink of the burnt plant beverage. I'm a hunter. You are a xenobiologist. I'm a hunter who studied xenobiology. The human smiled slightly. Humans are persistence hunters. We chase prey until it collapses from exhaustion. To do that effectively, you have to be really good at spotting weaknesses. Injuries, fatigue, behavioral changes. We're wired for it. Our brains dedicate massive processing power to identifying vulnerable targets. Vreshikal considered this information. The treaty documents had mentioned human predatory classification, but he had thought of it as a historical footnote, irrelevant to modern civilian interactions. So you observe these specimens and automatically identify their vulnerabilities, he said. More or less. I see what's wrong because I'm built to see what's wrong. It's pattern recognition mostly. Once you know what healthy behavior looks like, sick behavior stands out. Specialist Kowalski gestured at the tanks. Your automated systems are great at measuring specific parameters, but they don't see the whole picture. They can't spot the little details that add up to something being off. And you can. Yeah, it's what humans do. Vreshikal returned to Lab 7 and spent the evening reviewing documentation on human evolutionary history. The data was extensive and disturbing. Humans had evolved as pursuit predators on a world with few natural advantages. No venom, no armor, no significant speed or strength. They had compensated by developing the ability to track prey across vast distances, to read subtle environmental signs, to identify weak points in other organisms. Their eyes, he learned, had evolved with exceptional motion tracking and pattern recognition capabilities. Their brains processed visual information through multiple redundant pathways. They were neurologically optimized for the single task of finding things that were vulnerable and exploiting those vulnerabilities. It explained much about Specialist Kowalski's observational abilities. It did not explain why the thought made Vreshikal uncomfortable. The comprehensive review took 3 weeks. By the end of it, Specialist Kowalski had identified problems in 47 specimens across 5 laboratories. Some were minor. Some required immediate intervention. All had been missed by the automated monitoring systems and the trained staff. Director Shentok convened an emergency meeting of the department heads. We need to understand why our systems are failing, the director said, his throat sac pulsing with agitation. These specimens represent years of research investment. We cannot afford to lose them to undetected health problems. The systems are not failing, Vreshikal said carefully. They are performing exactly as designed. They measure specific parameters with great precision, but they do not measure everything. They cannot observe behavioral subtleties or contextual anomalies. Then we need better systems. Or, Vreshikal said slowly, we need observers with different capabilities. The meeting proceeded along predictable lines. Committee formation. Procedure review. Budget allocation for equipment upgrades. All standard responses to identified problems. But Vreshikal found himself thinking about Specialist Kowalski, who sat quietly in the corner taking notes, whose eyes moved across the assembled staff with the same focused intensity they brought to examining specimen tanks. The human was reading them, he realized. Reading their body language, their vocal patterns, their stress signals, identifying vulnerabilities. It should have been threatening. Instead, it was merely factual. After the meeting, Vreshikal approached Specialist Kowalski. I have a question of a theoretical nature. Sure. When you observe us, the station staff, do you see our weaknesses the same way you see specimen weaknesses? Specialist Kowalski was quiet for a moment. Yes and no. I see stress signals. I see when someone's uncomfortable or tired or angry. But I'm not hunting you, so I don't process it the same way. It's more like reading social cues. But you could hunt us, if circumstances required it. Technically, yes. Humans can hunt anything. The human's expression shifted to something Vreshikal could not quite interpret. We're good at killing things. Really good. It's what we evolved to do. But we're also good at not killing things. We're social animals. We have empathy. We make choices about how to use our capabilities. And you choose not to hunt us. I choose to help you. Same skill set. Different application. Vreshikal considered this. In his species, predatory instinct and social cooperation were separate behavioral systems, regulated by different neural structures. The idea that humans use the same cognitive tools for both hunting and helping was difficult to process. That seems inefficient, he said. Specialist Kowalski laughed. Yeah, humans aren't really designed for efficiency. We're designed for surviving whatever the universe throws at us. Turns out that requires being good at a lot of things, even contradictory things. The weeks passed. Specialist Kowalski continued reviewing specimens. Vreshikal continued documenting the observations. Slowly, he began to see what the human saw. Not with the same automatic precision, but with growing competence. A subtle color shift, an unusual posture, a behavioral pattern that did not quite match the established baseline. His reports improved. The director noted it in performance reviews. Other staff began requesting his assistance with problematic specimens. One morning, during routine observations, Vreshikal noticed something wrong with the Gliza 667 filter feeder in Tank 19. The creature's filtering rhythm was irregular. Its positioning was defensive. The water chemistry was optimal, but something was causing distress. He called Specialist Kowalski over. Do you observe anything unusual about this specimen? The human studied the tank for a long moment. Actually, no. Looks healthy to me. What are you seeing? Vreshikal described the irregular rhythm, the defensive posture. Specialist Kowalski watched for another minute, then nodded slowly. You're right. I missed it. The rhythm's off. Good catch. Something warm and unfamiliar moved through Vreshikal's thought processes. Pride, perhaps? Or satisfaction at competent work? Or the pleasure of learning a new skill from an unexpected source? You have taught me to observe differently, he said. You're a quick study. Specialist Kowalski made a note on the tablet. We should check the specimen for internal parasites. That irregular rhythm might indicate something interfering with its filtering mechanism. They checked. There was a parasite. A small one, recently introduced, that would have eventually caused serious damage if left undetected. They treated it. The specimen recovered. That evening, as Vreshikal was preparing to leave Lab 7, Specialist Kowalski appeared with 2 containers of the burnt plant beverage. Decaf, the human said, offering 1 container. I checked the chemical composition. It won't hurt you. Vreshikal accepted the container cautiously. The beverage tasted bitter and strange, but not unpleasant. They stood together, watching the specimen tanks hum their steady song. Why did you volunteer for this assignment? Vreshikal asked. Most humans prefer more exciting postings. Military vessels, exploration ships. This is just a research station. I like research stations. They're calm, predictable. Specialist Kowalski smiled slightly. After you've spent enough time hunting things that are trying to kill you, predictable becomes appealing. You have military experience. 10 years. Reconnaissance specialist. I got very good at spotting enemy positions, weak points in defensive structures, vulnerable supply lines. The human took a long drink. Then I got tired of using those skills to hurt people, So I went back to school and learned to use them to help people instead.